Today we're diving into a normal problem, and that is worn out Fox shocks on your Ford Raptor. If your truck just feels bouncy, like it's soft and it's rocking all over the place like a boat, then it's likely time you need to address the shocks. Now, if you guys follow along, you would have known that I just recently purchased a Gen 1 Raptor, and the more and more time I put onto it, the more and more I just realized the ride is just completely horrible. And when I first drove the truck, it really didn't dawn on me how bad it was until I started driving this and then going back to my Gen 2 Raptor, and I instantly knew this truck rides nowhere near what it needs to. I can definitely tell you that on the driver front, it is very more blown than the passenger side because the front side likes to tuck more than the passenger side. It just doesn't feel planted like my Gen 2, and it's probably never going to because my Gen 2 has the live valve shocks, so it's never gonna ride as good. This thing should still ride pretty damn good with the Blue Fox shocks. And it's actually like unpleasant to drive, so I don't even really, that's another reason why I haven't really drove this truck that much. I just keep preferring to take my Gen 2. For one, it is super comfortable, I'm not gonna lie. But I can just tell the difference in ride quality, so when it rides like this, it just kind of drives me insane and I don't want to drive it. So I'm super pumped that we're getting the fresh rebuilds put on today. And we just passed the state trooper. He is turning around, so I'm getting pulled over for window tint. And keep in mind, the window tint came on this truck like this. I mean, it's faded green. There's no way I just recently did it after buying this truck. I can almost guarantee you that guy's coming back for me. And if he does give me a ticket, I'm not gonna be happy. But you know what? It's always the state patrol. It's always state patrol here in Iowa. It's never like the local cops that pull you over for window tint. I'm not speeding. So just a little update. We're currently pulled over for window tint. I'm gonna be nice to him because the guy's not a straight up prick like most of the state patrol around here. We'll see what he does. He knows that I still have a temporary tag on the truck and that I did just buy the truck. I guess we'll see. Hopefully he don't give me a ticket, but usually you don't get let off for free with these state patrol. Just a little update. He left us with a warning. So I thought the guy was kind of cool, but I'm like, dude, how are you gonna give me a ticket when I straight up just have a temporary tag? And like I said, the tint is green, so you know I didn't just recently do this. It's atrocious. That didn't make my day more expensive than what it's already gonna be. But back to these shocks, and the other dead giveaway when I instantly knew that these shocks were completely toast was I have one of those pedal commanders in the truck. It came with it. First off, when you stick a pedal commander in Sport Plus mode on this V8, this thing is so blippy that you can't even drive it. That is just for literally off-road. Once I stuck it in Sport Plus mode and gassed it, that's when reality set in that these shocks are KO'd. So one of the first things to check for is obviously like some sort of damage or leaky seals around the shock. Your shock shafts could wear down and potentially cause, you know, leaking oil as well. So there's just so many variables, and that's why all over the forums you'll see that they say you should replace your shocks every 50,000 miles. And that's because even if they're not leaky or showing any signs of being blown, this is a nitrogen shock and it's not completely 100% sealed. So over time, it's gonna lose nitrogen and it's not gonna be the same as what it used to be. Exactly how it was like when I had a ATV and I raced motocross. I would always send those shocks in every year or two to get serviced because over time, they're still gonna leak nitrogen. Even if you buy a Raptor with low miles, but it's been setting or, you know, it's still, you know, 10 years old, there's a very good chance that it still just needs rebuilt because there's not as much nitrogen in them as there once was. But we've got the shocks loaded up. We're heading over to my mechanic's house. He's gonna get me taken care of and get them swapped over. And there's also a couple other things that have been going on with this that we're gonna get checked out. For one, there's like a noise in the rear end. I don't know if it's maybe like a bearing or just we need some sort of rear end servicing done. But you might actually just be able to hear it kind of in the background. It just kind of seems like a humming noise. I'm pretty sure it's not the tires. I want to say I'm guessing that it's something in the rear end, so stay tuned because we're going to check that out as well.
Move or lose a lot lean. Don't even stop or seen anything a man still dreaming of. Pause. Stop the clock if I get ripped off. Will I give a fuck or not? With a beat too aggy. This is how I'm feeling. Beat you up, smacking from the floor to the ceiling. Stop.
Alright, so the mad scientist Caleb got me squared away. He's in the process of adding a second lift to his shop. So right now his current lift is being taken over by a 2000 Ford Lightning which is getting an overhaul with a supercharger, and I kind of regret not taking a couple clips for you guys because that thing is going to be a beast when it's done. We ended up taking the truck for a drive, and right away he noticed the noise coming from the rear end, which you probably can hear it right now. It's like a good humming noise. And he said it's basically probably the bearings in the rear end are shot. It's kind of hard to pinpoint which bearing it is, so he's just going to end up doing all the bearings in the rear end. So the truck's going to spend the weekend out at his place once it kind of warms up and get this thing quieted back down and road trip worthy. And the other problem that we found was when we were reinstalling the driver's side shock, he had noticed that the IWE harness was smashed. So someone previously did some suspension work to this and they smashed that harness. So when the truck is out at his place getting all the bearings updated, we're also gonna have him swap out that harness just because I want this truck to be mechanically sound and I don't want any issues from it.
To lose the plot, get ready now, move, or lose a lot, lean. Breathe and stop, I've seen anything a man still dreaming of, pause. Stop the clock.
For the shocks, I ended up contacting Brian over at Shocks by Hammer, and he got me set up. And basically what he does is he offers a shock exchange program. So what you'll do is you'll take some photos of the current state of your shocks that are on your vehicle right now, and then what he's gonna end up doing is you're gonna receive shocks back that are rebuilt, kind of in the same condition. They're generally not gonna be worse than what you already have. And just to kind of show you guys what I'm talking about, these are the replacement shocks that he sent me, and you'll notice there's kind of a coating right here, and that's because there was a little rust because I actually had him take this perch, move it up from here to up here, and there's just kind of like corrosion and stuff like that from moving it because it was in the lower position for most of its life. He just did like a little rust inhibitor coating just to protect it. Otherwise, the shocks are in really good shape. We'll come back here to the rear one, and you can kind of see that this rear one's in pretty good shape. If there is any type of like rust or something, he gets that off. And we'll come back to my nice, disgusting OEM ones to show you that, unfortunately for Brian, he gets a very nice, oily, greasy shock back that was completely blown. And you can just see how on this lower perch, how mine's set on the low perch right now, because these are my OEM ones. And you can just see the rust kind of forming around there. So basically, once he moved it, it exposed all of that trapped under there. He just basically goes through, cleans these up, and he does a really good job. And it is a penetrating 16 degrees here in Iowa, so I'm gonna get back in the truck. Whew. Now, if you're into the forums, every so often you'll come across someone that says, hey, I have a leaking shock that was rebuilt. Generally, the culprit is your shock shaft. What happens is they rebuild these shocks, they put new seals in it. Every so often, someone's still saying that they received a shock that's leaking. That's because the main culprit is they're reusing shock shafts. And when your shock shaft gets wore down, it's not gonna create as good of a seal as it would new. So what Brian does is on every Gen 1 shock rebuild, they get new shock shafts regardless. Trying to save someone a couple dollars without replacing the shock shaft just results in an unhappy customer sometimes. So trying to cut corners or just being a little cheap to save the customer a couple bucks, he just goes ahead, throws the new shafts in, calls it a day. And the other thing that he adds to these shocks are the Schrader valves, and that's basically just so you can check the pressure, adjust it, and if you need to recharge it down the road, you can add some, because these shocks, like I said, are not completely sealed. His recommendation, I think, after maybe a year or so, would be to check the pressures and possibly recharge them, just because it's not a complete sealed shock, and you do lose nitrogen over time. The other thing that you do receive with your purchase, which I thought was very cool, is a nice pressure gauge to check your shocks. If you look him up, he has nothing but positive reviews, and he has done thousands of Raptor shocks, and I just know when it comes time for my Gen 2 shocks, I will be sending them off to him. I can confirm the truck drives and handles 100 times better. As you guys seen, I had a couple shocks that were just completely blown out. My driver's side shock took no force. I mean, literally nothing to push that shock down. Oil all over the ground from just sitting there. One of the rear ones you could push down pretty easily. And I can tell you that all of the brand new ones, you could not push down. So that just goes to show you how bad those were. So basically my driver's side front was just relying totally on the spring, and the shock was taking none of it, which was why this thing was very unpredictable. So if you guys have been thinking about updating your shocks and swapping them out with rebuilds, don't hesitate, reach out to Brian. He will get you fixed up and get you riding how you should be. That's a wrap on freshening up the Gen 1. Wrigley, do you got anything to add? Nope. You guys know the drill. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.